Welcome to the Spring 2021 semester in our Core Facilities Seminar Series. Today we will be featuring the centralized UMass Core Facilities Administrative Management Tool, CORUM. For those of you who do not know me, I am Lisa Korpieski, the Director of Communications and Marketing here at the Institute for Applied Life Sciences. In today's seminar, you will be hearing from Andrew Vinard, the Director of the UMass Amherst Core Facilities, as well as our Systems Administrator, Bob Stevens. We are hoping that with these biweekly seminars, you will discover what great resources that the centralized UMass Amherst Core Facilities offer to our campus community, the New England region, and beyond. Next, just a few housekeeping items. This seminar is being recorded, as you heard. If you missed any part of this seminar or would like to forward it to someone who could not attend, there will be a replay of this and all previous seminars in this series on our website. I will put the link in the chat for you. I recommend you set your view mode to speaker. Please stay muted during the presentation. We will save the Q&A until the end of the presentation. During that time, unmute yourself and ask your question. I encourage you to put all your questions in the chat. This way we can have a record of it and they can be easily added to our FAQ page. Thank you. So now I would like to introduce you to Andrew Vinard, Director of our centralized UMass Amherst Core Facilities. Andrew?
Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the first core seminar of the spring semester. I'd first like to start and say thank you to a few folks, including TableXI, a software development firm who has been our partner in developing CORUM and is here with us today, listening into some of the progress we've made and questions you might have. To the core facility accounting team, including Charlene Coleman, Pat LaHoulier, and Aaron Nugent for their efforts in processing all of our back billing, providing guidance through the build out and their ongoing support of CORUM and the cores as a whole. To the core facility directors and staff for the input and engagement and development and rollout of CORUM, not to mention their continual patience with me. And last but not least, to Bob Stevens, who has quickly become CORUM's lead wizard and is why it functions so well. If you haven't had a chance to interact with us much, the UMass cores are open to anyone from undergrads through senior scientists, regardless of your affiliation, including researchers from other academic institutions and commercial partners. From sending us samples for analysis to designs to 3D print, to become a trained user on advanced imaging instrumentation, there are many opportunities for you to engage with us, no matter your level of expertise. We are here to be your partner and to help expand your research productivity. And CORUM is a tool built for that purpose. Today, we'll go over some high-level functions in the system with the dual goals of making you more aware of how it works, and more importantly, where you can go to find help when you need it. So with that, I'm going to try to share a screen and not lose everything. We'll actually start at the beginning. It's probably a good way to go. All right. So the agenda again, just we'll do a quick overview of what CORUM is, go over just a few how-to basics aimed at the users, and then some high-level how-tos from the business manager perspective. We'll talk a little bit about some of our future development plans. Number 5 is probably the most important, to share the tools that you need to go to get help when you need it. And then I'd like to get to the Q&A, because I hope a lot of you have some good questions on how you're using the system now or how you might be able to. At any given time, I'm going to ask Lisa to kind of monitor. If you have a burning question, feel free to shoot a hand up, but hopefully we'll get through my talking points pretty quick, and then we'll get to have an open dialogue. So what is CORUM? At its very high level, it's a transaction processing system. By way of history, this is a system that was built at Northwestern University and is currently being used to manage about 60 cores that they have there that run the gamut and spread a range a lot more widely than what UMass Amherst has. And Northwestern has been a pivotal partner too, to not only evaluate the system, but as we grow it and find additional capabilities to make sure we have demonstrated capabilities that we can bring in-house and make sure we know how they operate. One of the most important things when we started this system before we rolled it out and gave anybody access was making sure we had these built connections, specifically Active Directory, which means you are using your one single sign-on at UMass to log into the system. So you don't have to remember other passwords. You don't have to have a CORUM specific account. It's one way to make sure that we are using a system that authenticates and validates who the users in the system are. Likewise, PeopleSoft integrations are to make sure that we have real data that we're pulling and accessing, which also helps in billing to make sure that we are actually doing billing with proper speed types and real speed types that are valid and not expired. Right now, we are doing billing manually still, meaning all of the usage is turned into an Excel sheet that gets uploaded to the bursar's or controller's office. But in the near future, that will be an automated process, which is really critical to have that PeopleSoft connections built from day one. And last but not least is we have connections built to OWL. which if you haven't been at the campus very long, is where we go to keep all of our environmental health and safety trainings recorded. This allows us to track trainings in the core in a simplistic way. Most of the facilities, all the facilities require some training. Some facilities require more training than others. Being able to connect directly with OWL means that we have a one-stop shop for the core directors to validate that you actually are trained in the areas you need to be. But this is also important to know, because if you don't have your certifications proper and updated, then you may be prohibited from accessing equipment. So remember those EH&S trainings. For those who have specific core trainings, they're also trackable on OWL, so that it's, again, a one-stop shop for convenience for both the users and the core staff. Moving on to who is this for? In short, everybody at UMass and anybody that has any interactions with core facilities. But for the core directors, this really should be a way to change the way they have a lot of business practices to make their life a lot easier. So not only can they actually schedule and track usage of services and equipment, they're also then able to see the activity that's going in and out of the core, which helps them give me reports in the future. This access aspect is very important, because there's very few ways for us to know folks are a validated user without all kinds of complications. But for a system like CORUM that allows us to actually track in real time who has been authorized to use certain speed types and accounts. PIs are now able to actually look at the charges being spent against their different spending sources, make sure that people who are supposed to have authority to use those systems are in the system, and so they can get billing notifications so they can see in real time if people are using the right speed types and accounts relative to certain projects, and more importantly, if people are spending as intended or if they might be overspending. Users, which may be the PIs in some instances, but quite often is the lab staff and students. You are allowed to directly purchase services, provided you have the proper authority and training to do on certain equipment. And you can review your own usage to make sure that what you intended to use is what's there, and dispute any challenges. If you use an hour and it's showing up as 3 hours in the system, you can raise your hand and say, this doesn't seem right to me, and the core staff can look into it and figure out how they can help you. The account managers, billing administrators on campus here have a way to verify that the PIs and students are using the speed types and sources of funding that they should, to add new users to the system and monitor those users to make sure they are appropriate, to add payment sources or work with us to add payment sources when needed. And for administrators, and this is at the departmental level, at the my level, and at the central level, to monitor and report what's happening in our cores, which are critical resources to campus, but sometimes don't get much communication beyond, are they making or losing money this year? So in the near future, we'll be able to send a robust report about how comprehensive these facilities are to usage across campus and to the research mission. So we're going to go through some of the specific how-tos. I will start by saying, number one, I am not a heavy user of CORUM, so I'm going to be going from a very high level, but we have folks online, both core facility staff and directors, who can help you with certain questions, and also the experts, again, Bob Stevens and the team from TableXI, in case we get in, or rather I get in over my head. So from the very beginning, those of you who haven't created an account yet, what do we do to get onto the system? You'll see this, hopefully my cursor shows up, but you'll see this email address used time and again. You should bookmark that, that website and make sure you have access to it. This is not the CORUM system itself, but this is the website where you go to get all of the support information you need. And on that website, you'll find the user authorization form, which looks like this over here. Pretty straightforward: who you are, your email address, and your net ID. Those features, those fields are very important, so we can put you onto the system. And again, it gets you into using Active Directory versus having a dedicated external account. If you're on the call and you happen to be an external user, there is another form on this page that you would fill out, which wouldn't put you into our Active Directory. And if you happen to be an external user and you have questions on that, stay towards the end and we'll hit that one specifically. Once we get your information, an administrator, Bob most likely, will add you into the system and you'll receive a welcome email. And at that point, you can go to the main CORUM webpage and be able to add your log in, again, just using your Active Directory account. Once you're into the system, you'll be able to browse all of the cores. Depending on what you have access to, will basically state what you're able to reserve or utilize. You'll have to have a valid payment source. So when you are filling out that form, you have to identify who your PI is, and then we'll get a speed type authorization form from the PI to make sure that you actually have a speed type to charge against. Once you have a speed type and you have access to the system, you'll find the core you want to work with, drill down to an instrument you'd like to make a reservation on, or item you'd like to purchase, and then you'll select it, enter your reservation time, and be off and running. Once you go to the individual course, so you can see this is in Mass Spec specifically, there are these different types of services. So there are things that have these calendar items, and that's going to be something maybe obviously that has a calendar associated with it. So if you want to schedule an hour of time, you click one of these buttons. It would bring you to a calendar view where you can select the time, or I'll show you in a second what another view may be once you click it and decide to add the time manually. As you're making reservations, you'll note that a lot of these service lines have locks on them. That means that you're only allowed to make a reservation if you have authority to do so. So a lot of the equipment, if not the majority of the equipment, you have to have specialized training to be able to use. It's not you just walk in day one and can go use the Synapse. There's likely going to be a training from the core facility specifically before you're allowed to do that. So if you see that lock button, you're still able to go in, and if it doesn't allow you to make a reservation, you can request training, and at that point, the core facility staff will reach out to you and coordinate training so that you can then make your own reservations. Again, once you've selected the service or the object you'd like to acquire, you'll be obligated to input your speed type, which will allow you to make a reservation. This is going to be something else I emphasize time and time again as we go. This should not be arbitrary. You should not just be picking the first speed type that drops down when you go to make a reservation. It's really important that you pick the right speed type for the project you are working on. Meaning if you work for PI who happens to have 4 or 5 projects they have ongoing, you want to make sure you are selecting the correct speed type. We can fix this after the fact before billing is actually run, but it's really best practice to make sure that you are selecting the account that goes to the project you are working on, so that the grant that was requested and obtained to work on whatever it is you are doing in the core is the grant that is charged for the service you use. Again, if you're doing this calendar time, you'll make sure you're looking at the calendar, pick the time you'd like, and you can see here, create reservation. Some services have to be validated by the core facility to say, yes, this is okay to go. But a lot of them, if you are an authorized user, once you click create, it goes as a hold onto the calendar. Again, I'm going to show you, or rather emphasize that this website exists. And just to show you what the importance of this website, we have a lot of documentation and a lot of information and a lot of resources on the site, including how-to videos that walk you through exactly what I just told you about. I'm going to play that real quick just so you can see how that works. Oops.
To log into CORUM, sign in with your UMass Net ID in the upper right-hand corner of the CORUM webpage. Once logged in, browse the list of core facilities and select the core that you.
Instead of going the whole thing, just please remember these videos are all there. They're comprehensive and we'll walk you through every step that we just did as well.
Time period. Be sure to include start and end times. Click create and you're good to go. Your reservations will appear on the My Reservations tab at the top of your screen.
So once you have orders, as Isabel emphasized there, you'll be able to go and then validate. So if you scheduled it for next week, you'll have a place where you can go see what your upcoming reservations, which piece of equipment you plan to use. And if you dial in there, you can see which speed type you listed. So you always have a chance to change it, even before you get to using the service line. Again, just to emphasize, not all equipment is open access. You must be trained. And if you are not trained, you can see the prompt you'll get to say, contact the facility director or staff to be able to get access. So it's not just closes you out and you're not able to get access. If you aren't trained, you have the ability within the system to request that required training. If you've made a reservation, I'll let Isabel tell you how it is that you can modify that reservation if need be.
Identify the reservation that you would like to alter and select Move Up. The system will prompt you with an available time. Confirm by clicking Move. Now you've successfully adjusted your appointment.
And again, that adjustment will show in the My Reservations tab. And then if you should need to cancel a reservation.
If you are looking to cancel a CORUM reservation, this can be done in a few simple steps. First, select the My Reservations tab at the top of the CORUM homepage. If you have multiple orders on queue, identify the order that you would like to change and select Cancel. And that's all there is to it. From there, the system will forfeit your reservation.
There are some cores that have some guidelines in terms of how far in advance you can and can't cancel a reservation. This is for the benefit of the other users of the facility. If you cancel in too short a time, other people don't have the opportunity to be able to go in and take advantage of the found time. Similarly, there are a lot of cores that have restrictions on how far in advance you can make a reservation for the same reason. If folks get in the habit of just booking out 3 weeks in advance and then never use the facility, that blocks it off for other people from planning. So just be cognizant as you're making reservations. There may be restrictions on how far you can make a reservation before the time of service, and how long before a reservation you're allowed to cancel without incurring a fee for that cancellation. Jumping over to the business admin side, and once we get to the Q&A, the users who are on the call, if you want to jump back over those processes or talk about any others, I'm happy to do so. And for those business admins on the call that may have been on in September, this is going to look very familiar, but just in case folks weren't able to join, we want to do a rerun and then again get to the dialogue. So the business admins are our crucial partner in this process, and really hopefully an end goal of the system is that your lives are a little bit easier because you're able to track spending in real time versus months after the fact. I know those of you who are on the call have been great partners dealing with all the back billing we did, essentially from July 1 through, we'll say, September, October. There were a lot of bills that were kind of in waiting until we got the system functional. So there's just been a flood to deal with over the last few months, and I'm grateful for all of you being patient as we work through some of the kinks and as we find out how to make sure the system works most effectively. As it states here on the page, the primary tab you're going to focus on is the My Payment Sources. This is a way for the business admins to look at all the payment sources they have access to, and then any transactions that are occurring on those payment sources. And also any members that are on those payment sources. And this is something, again, we're going to talk about best practices, getting in the habit of going in and saying, okay, this individual is no longer working for this PI, so we might as well pull them off so that they don't erroneously make a reservation that then we have to fix after the fact. Payment sources. At this point, still, we are asking for PIs to complete the core authorization form. This is a way for us to document that it was authorized for the specific speed types to be utilized. And we're going to continue using that form. Everything that I can see so far, it's a pretty quick turnaround. Again, I have to give all thanks to Bob primarily on that one. As you send in a form, he gets it into the system as quickly as he can, and it's always faster than I ever expect. So point being, if you have a new payment source for your PI, make sure you fill out the form. We'll get it in the system, and then we'll add the users to make sure that everybody has access to it who needs it. The members can be added, and they can be added with different categories. So you can see there's an example here that Bob had put up of an account he has there specifically. And somebody can be an owner, which is typically the PI. Then you can have the business manager who is operating and looking after the account, making sure it's being used appropriately. And then users are the folks who are able to make purchases on the individual speed types. And again, we're going to emphasize you want to regularly review who's on those speed types. Labs change regularly, change the staffing. And just to avoid people making reservations with the wrong speed type, if you're checking regularly, this is a way to make sure we're clearing people that don't need to be on accounts off of those accounts. Transaction history, this is another spot for you to go to. And you can see here on this example, you see a bunch of different types of orders and the status that they are in. You can see from everything that is complete but hasn't been sent for payment to something that's already received payment and has been reconciled. Right now, again, billing is a manual process for the accountants, so they have to take everything that has been sent for payment. Once they process the 7-day waiting period and don't hear any objections, they prepare and route it for journaling, and then we'll move to that reconciled stage. But you're able to filter and see what status different orders are in. Right now, I believe the best way to do that is export things as a CSV, and then you can sort. We're in talks with TableXI about whether we can make these columns sortable so you can look at it within the web page and make it a little bit easier instead of having to export every time you're here. You can also, there's a lot of features in here too. So if you're a business admin manager who has multiple PIs you oversee, you can look for payment sources by specific owners. You can look for things that have been completed, things that have been ordered, things that have been fulfilled, every status here, and obviously by date and time that the services were rendered. So once we get completely caught up to billing, if you just want to hop in, say right now it's January, you want to go back and look at just the orders for December, this is the window where you're able to filter that down. And then again, export anything you want to do as much filtering, sorting, and reviewing as you'd like. The process for the reviews right now at this point, it's a manual process where we move things from completed to ready for payment or ready for review. So again, we'll kind of pick right now as a month to use as an example and say work was done in December. By the first or second week, we hope we're still optimizing our processes right now. Things will move from complete to ready for payment. And you'll get a notification. The PIs will get a notification. I believe the business manager does as well. And starts a 7-day clock for people to dispute charges. This could be for any number of reasons. If the PI is looking at it and says, actually, they used the wrong speed type. Or no, you know what, I think that I only used 1 hour and it says I used 3 there. Or it says I only used 1 hour and I know I used 3, which is what we'd love to have happen. This is your chance to raise your hand and say, actually, this should be modified before we get to the actual journal happening. Again, because it's manual right now, once that 7-day period is done, the accountants take it, put it on the proper form and send it for journaling. But in the near future, this is going to be automated. So if you don't catch it in that 7-day period, it's going to be journaled and we'll have to solve it after the fact, go back and make any reconciliations we need to. That can still happen. It's just going to be a little bit more laborious of a process. So we're trying to really emphasize when you get those notifications for review, make sure you take advantage of that 7-day period. This is new. I think as of last week, maybe the week prior, we now, at the request of some of the business managers, have the ability that if you do review in that 7-day period and see that the transactions are okay, you're able to manually mark them as reviewed, which will prompt it to that next stage of journal or ready for journal. So in the transactions, my transactions in review, you can identify, I had to do this on an example facility, so I only had one, but if you are, again, managing multiple PIs, as many are in the review stage as you want to, you can select. If you want to select them all in one fell swoop, you have that option on this page, and then you can mark them as reviewed. And again, it prompts that next stage, which is going to the journal process. I think that's all we have kind of specific for the business managers. So now we're going to emphasize things I said a couple times. Some of these best practices we're asking for you to help us with. For the business admins and PIs, we really want you to make sure that your students understand the importance of selecting the proper speed type. Again, this just saves work at the end of the process. So if people are just arbitrarily picking a number, and then we have to do all the cleanup at the end of the service run and that review period, you're just raising the chances of things going wrong or maybe things being missed that we didn't realize were being missed. At the same time, it would make sense to make sure you're checking who is authorized on certain speed types. Since lab staff changes, I would say the beginning and end of semesters are good times to do this, but we will not specify when you need to, just emphasize that it's really important you check regularly. For students, again, just going to hammer this home, make sure you select the proper speed type. It saves a lot of people a lot of work if you just pick the right speed type from the get-go. Again, things change and you might not be able to, or you might have selected the wrong one unintentionally. We can fix that, but the more you get used to knowing which accounts you should be using, the easier it will be for everybody else. This one right here is something you will be hearing from the core directors from quite a bit because it's led to quite a lot of work right now. Folks are making their reservations, going in and starting services, but for whatever reason may be, forgetting to end their reservations. The result is we get a whole lot of error messages that say, okay, this reservation started but never ended. So how long should we build them for? So you can see that little sub-bullet there that if you don't log out and this continues to be an issue, we're going to be forced to start sending bills for what the full reservation time frame is, which again is just going to lead to more work after the fact because people are going to say, no, actually I only used it for this amount of time. We're going to have to jump back into system logs and make sure that that's valid. And it's going to be a lot of work on everybody's part. So really remember, if you are using timed services, it is critical that as you are done with the service, you end your reservation. I don't think we have a video on that one just yet, but if need be, we can make sure we create a video to show just how it is that you do end a reservation and put an FAQ up to make sure you all have access to it. Best practices on our part, we are really making sure that the system is accessible and flexible and to be able to be as user-friendly as possible, making sure there's a lot of documentation for you to get self-service. We don't want you being on your own. We want you to know that if you need help, we are here for you and will help you. But there is a lot of documentation that Bob Stevens has spent a significant amount of time collating and putting together. And it's really useful information, everything from those videos on down to workflow charts about how you actually access the system, where certain things are in the system and what the intended use of certain aspects of it are. So please check this website regularly. The user questions are built out and regularly updated based on the questions you send to us. So we will be modifying those as you ask for things and we realize it is useful, either a change to the system or just something we can articulate better how you can utilize. And a feedback form. There are a couple different things I'm going to leave when we go to Q&A on the different websites and links for support. But there's a form right there you can fill out, and that goes directly to us to be able to get back to you, whether it's just a comment, you want to leave us some information about how much you love the system. There's a question you have about how to utilize the system, or there's a request you have for a new feature that might not be there yet. The form is a good place to start sending that information along. Here's the website again. This is the help website. You can see here on the right side some of the information that's on there already. Stuff geared towards the users, towards the business managers, towards the staff. It is all open source. So if you're curious about the system, there's nothing preventing you from hopping into the manage orders and just see how it is the directors are doing the processes they do. You won't have access in the CORUM system to be able to make any changes to service lines, but you can at least see some of the processes we use to set up systems and service lines. This is the feedback form. It is as generic as can be. So you have to tell us who you are and what you want to say. But beyond that, whatever you want to tell us, we're happy to receive information and feedback. If you're using the system and encounter a glitch, something wrong with your ability to log in, something wrong with the system that doesn't seem right, we're encouraging you to email it@umass.edu. This is the same generic email address that all of UMass IT uses for any IT issues, whether it's with your computer, whether it's with software you use, or any IT system at UMass. This is the same help desk email. So to make sure it gets where it needs to go, we're asking you to put CORUM in the subject line. Using this email address saves you if it's something that is managed by the central offices versus us. And a specific example is if you're having problems with your Active Directory account and you send us an account to the feedback form, Bob or myself or Andrew Scott, who is UMass, IL's IT lead, will then have to forward that over to Active Directory. Versus if you use the IT address, they are monitoring the queue. We'll say it's an Active Directory question, put you in the queue to be addressed and serviced accordingly. We'll go back to this page just to make sure I leave that up when we get to the Q&A. But I want to talk a little bit about our future plans. I should watch the clock, make sure I'm not babbling. Okay. So some plans we have moving forward, integration with forms. For those of you that are using the service-based cores, so like genomics and some of the other facilities that are actually talking about whole projects versus just using hourly services, we're working on building forms to make that a little bit more of an integrated process. A lot of the facilities right now will have a PDF form that you have to fill out and send back and then attach it in the system to be able to get service. Once we reintegrate the forms, it will all be online and contained within the system. We are in talks about how we can actually ask people to create their own CORUM accounts. Again, right now I showed you have to fill in a form and Bob or another administrator will actually create your account. We're in talks about how we can make that an automated process. This one is for anybody who's using our clean rooms right now. Something we're excited about, Northwestern has used for quite a while, is being able to use your card reader, walk up to a facility, scan yourself in, and automatically be checked to have those safety certifications and logged in the system to make sure that you are using it appropriately. That's probably a little bit ways out, but it's something that the system is capable of and we want to take advantage of. Generation of quotes right now, you can use the system to schedule services and essentially use that as a quote, but we're hoping to be able to convert it. So if you're just thinking about whether you want to use this service line or go somewhere else, or you're trying to plan in a grants application and you want to figure out what services might cost, being able to generate quotes within the system is an ability to help you do that. For those on the human subject side of research, we're hoping to at some point connect into IRB. We haven't really talked much about that right now. It likely would just be really validating that you have an active IRB, but we're not sure. That's again a development, not really active right now, but something in the future. For those on the call who may be users but engage with other facilities on campus, polymer science, chemistry, CNS, there are a whole bunch of departments that have resources that are not part of the centralized core facilities that could also be taking advantage of CORUM, and we're determining how best to approach that. Right now, my priority is making sure all the centralized cores are on the system and functional before we start rolling it out to other folks, but we are definitely open to doing that. So please do reach out if you happen to represent one of those cores. I skipped one. I should have said speed types and users from other UMass campuses. This is more for our directors and staff. We do get a lot of usage from off campus and from the other campuses. And since we're all using PeopleSoft, it'd be ideal if we could kind of automate the payment sources. But we got to work on that because even though we are all UMass, we have our own quirks that we have to make sure we can overcome. And last but not least, just looking out to our partners at the other campuses. UMass Amherst has 30 centralized core facilities. Again, through other departments and colleges and other sensors, there are quite a few other resources on campus, but just centralized cores, all 5 campuses together have over 90 core facilities. And they're kind of disjointed how you access them all right now. So in my plan to take over the world, I hope at some point we can be able to engage the other campuses and have a one-stop shop for all of our users. We partner regularly with other campuses for resources that we don't have. And we'd love to see a world where it's easier for the users to be able to access those services too when it makes sense. So we asked you to submit some questions. I'm going to go through these quickly, and then whatever time we have left, we'll open the doors and say, please ask your questions, and we'll address them as we can. So the first question we got is there any way to mark those services that are already reviewed changes as reviewed? And as we showed, this was a request that came in. We worked with Table XI, and now you are able to say things that are in the review period. If you reviewed them, you don't have to wait for the 7-day period to expire. You can mark it reviewed, and it will be pushed forward. This isn't necessarily a quorum specific feature, but it was a question we saw a few times. It was about the core facility credit vouchers. So as a quick backstory for those who don't know, if you are an IELTS member, you accumulate the equivalent of about 1.5% of your IDCs to utilize in core facilities. I will say that this has been a 3, if not 4-year program that we've had available, but we've run into some pretty heavy and high hurdles that we're trying to overcome to show the accumulations of these core credits. It's undergoing and we're very close. We have a lot of support from the central offices to make sure the accumulations are happening and happening appropriately. And though I don't want to put Hannah Choi on the spot if she happens to be on the call, I'm hoping the next week or 2, maybe closer to 3 weeks, we'll have updated accumulations and be able to send at least notifications on a regular basis of what your total in core facility credit vouchers are. Probably the most important thing to know if you are somebody who, either a PI or somebody who works for a PI, who knows they have core facility credits, what you'll do is at the end of your service, so when you get billed, you'll dispute and say, I want to apply core credits. The accountants will take over at that point. If you happen to have them accumulated currently and we can see that accumulation, we'll spend them. If it's kind of on hold because of the process I just mentioned, where we're trying to actually update the accumulations, we'll put it on hold until we can validate what's there. And if for whatever reason there happens to be no credits available, we'll circle back to you and let you know that. Number 3 was a question about aggregating charges to make funding changes. I think this was really so if a whole bunch of students or a whole bunch of users have selected the wrong speed type and you want to move them all over the right speed type at the same time. We don't have that ability right now. We have talked about it preliminary with Table XI, but there might be some heavy programming that's involved in that. So just stay tuned on that one. Right now, what we can say is the accountants are standing by to help if need be. And if there's a lot of errors that we might need to fix, we don't have a one button solution at this point, but we'll work with you to make sure we can correct that. 4 and 5 are somewhat related. And again, not necessarily quorum specific, but hopefully we have a wider audience than just quorum users right now, or rather wide audience of core users. And this is really asking about access to the facilities to get training, especially given the current restrictions due to COVID. The short answer is you saw that the system does allow you to request training if you don't have it right now. So yes, quorum will allow you to request training. The longer, more nebulous question is whether training is allowed in individual facilities. And I'll add another website here for where you can get that information. We're maintaining an online webpage that is updated sometimes every day, sometimes every few weeks, but it gives a quick snapshot of the status of the facility and whether they're allowing new users. I strongly encourage you to engage the core facility director to say what your need is, and they'll see if they can accommodate you. A lot of non-hands-on training has moved virtually at this point. So if it's kind of more theoretical and not hands-on training, a lot of that has moved to Zoom type trainings or even just virtual online training that you can watch. But the hands-on training, it's just not possible in all cases to do safely because of the amount of time you need to spend in front of a machine. We are working through where we can. When we have proper PPE, when we have proper physical spacing allowed, we are taking new users on. So it's a long-winded way to say it's not a universal yes or no. It's specific to each individual core. I encourage you to check out this website. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can engage me or engage the core facility director to see what the options are right now. Jumping down to the next question, how do I review pending charges? We again mentioned that if you go to my transactions, you can see everything that is in whatever status it may be, ordered, completed, in review, awaiting payment, or reconciled. So the My Transactions tab is really critical for both the users, the PIs, and the admins. Manually marking transactions ready for review. Is that a possibility? As we showed, that has been an upgrade that was made just last week. And we're going to work on an FAQ so that the business admins and users can see how to actually do that process versus just a quick one slide that I showed there. And the last question that we were hit with is whether office hours will continue. Last semester, we were hosting office hours every other Tuesday. I'm going to say they weren't very well attended. It may have been due to our lack of widespread advertising, maybe because you guys are getting questions you need answered elsewhere. But absolutely, I would really like to host office hours and make ourselves available to you to make sure you guys are using the system as needed. But we're not really sure the tempo that we're going to do right now. So we're thinking maybe once a month, we'll at least have an hour open, if not longer, to stay, come with your questions, come with your concerns, come with your thoughts, and we'll leave the space open for you. So yes, they will be continuing. Please keep an eye out for messaging on that. And for the business administrators or PIs on the call, make sure you share that with the students so that they know we are approachable. We are trying to make sure the system works for everybody. And the best way to do that is just make sure we have open lines of communication. So with that, I will pause to take a sip of water, say thank you for listening to me, and say now please open up the questions. If they're in the chat, I'll ask Lisa to share them. But if you'd like to ask it directly, please feel free to unmute or show your video and ask away.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, there's no questions in the chat right now, but I welcome anyone to unmute yourself and ask Andrew your question specifically. Hey, Dave.
Dave, you sound like a Disney character right now. Can't hear you.
Maybe type it in the chat and I'll read it for you.
Is this better?
Much
That's
better.
better.
Oh, you can't hear me. Wait a second.
We can hear you.
Is that better? Okay. Sorry. So I've helped a lot of students join CORUM, right? And establish an account. And a lot of times they're like, oh, what speed type do I put in? How do I put in a speed type? I don't know what to do. Can you walk through what happens as a student when you apply for an account? Do you have to know the speed type number of your PI and put it in, or does it then like ask the PI who then has to approve it and add it to your account?
Bob, do you want to take that one? I'm going to try to go to the website and share.
Sure. Yeah, the sign up form for users has fields for speed types that they need to enter into the system, into the form before they submit it. They can get that from their PI or department business manager, I'm guessing.
This is the form, Dave. It has the PI's name there and the speed types. So they should be able to fill in at least a singular speed type. In fact, they're obligated to fill in a speed type. And then we get a speed type. So that will go to Bob for review and processing into the system.
Does the PI have to do something then to say, yes, okay, for this person to use the speed type?
Yeah, the PI has permission to go into CORUM and add that person as a member of the payment source. And that's actually the ideal way that should be done. It seems like, yeah. They'll get an email.
So the PI has to do something also. Oh, they get an email asking for that? That's good. Okay. Yeah, since I've never done this part, like it's hard for me to help people when they have questions. So it's good to know what happens there.
And then the PI themselves can add these as much as 6 per time they fill out the form speed types that they can add in the system, and they can list their business manager at that point. And then either the PI or the business manager can identify who's on the speed type and whether they're authorized. So there's positive notifications once the form's submitted, Dave, and then the approvals go from there.
If there aren't any other questions, I have a a feature request,
Go ahead.
which I've gotten from quite a few outside users that are trying to pay by credit card. A lot of people expect to pay through Quorum. They're like, oh, great, I'm here. Where's the pay button? Like, oh no, you got to go to your invoice. You got to go to the bottom. You got to click the button. And they're like, too much. So it would be nice if payment was incorporated on the same site.
We'll say the quick answer, Dave, is we agree it would be nice, but there are a lot of compliance issues, and basically we did not build Quorum with the certain security compliances that are required to be able to do it within the system. Charlene looked like she had some comments she wanted to make, so I don't know if.
No, I was going to say the
I
same
assume
thing.
it's not
Due to-
easy.
Yeah, Dave, due to compliance issues, we're not going to have the payment option through Quorum, at least now. And I'm not saying it's not going to be available in future years, but not right now. They won't give us the authorization to connect the two directly to the Commerce Manager.
You could put links, I guess, from Quorum to the Commerce Manager.
I mean, could there be a link right there that kicks you out and knows the right value and then brings you back? I mean, it happens with PayPal sometimes, if anyone uses PayPal ever. But we can talk about this offline, just sort of a request in general.
Yep.
Thank you.
John, I see your request there, the video clip of my statements. Luckily, this whole thing will be recorded and available. So if you ask Lisa for that specific segment, I'm sure she'd love to help you get that.
Yeah, happy to do that.
You can blast it on loop on the screen outside the facility.
Well, we have a quiet group today. Any other questions? Any last minute thoughts, Andrew?
No, well, I'll leave the space. If folks want to hop off, you're more than welcome, but I have the hour reserved. So if folks want to hang out, if you don't want to ask a question here, I'm available at any given time. Since I have the page shared, I'll again just emphasize that here you go. Fill out this form, it comes directly to us. We can comment on you. If you want one-on-one training, if you want to know more about a specific aspect, if you want to say we'd like more office hours, anything you want to say on this feedback form comes to us. And again, there are just a significant amount of resources here and available to you that you're not obligated to look through all these before you contact us, but just know Bob has spent a lot of time making sure there are enough resources here for you to get familiar with the system very rapidly. So we're here and available, but thank you all for coming today, and we'll hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay, and I just want to add that our next seminar is scheduled for Tuesday, February 9th, where you will hear from one of the directors of our NMR facility, Yasna Fejo, and learn why the research community relies on high field NMR spectroscopy in their research. So we hope to see you there.